Hello and welcome. Today I will go over 5 very in-depth game mechanics and tips and tricks that I guarantee will improve your gameplay by a lot. And how can I guarantee it? Well, some of these mechanics are so weird that even the best players of Riftbound still have some trouble understanding them and especially using these mechanics. Even I learned something new when making this guide, and it's also important to know how these mechanics work to make your games go smoother and faster, which is especially important for those tournament games with a very limiting timer. So before we get into the more confusing mechanics, let's start with a more common feature of Riftbound. So at number 5 is what I call passive abilities in Riftbound. For example, like Zonia's Hourglass and Set Legend. And Zonia's Hourglass says the next time a unit would die, kill this instead. So Hourglass is basically something that's passively waiting for you to fulfill that trigger the next time a unit would die. And when you finally do fulfill that trigger, Hourglass automatically procs itself, saving the unit that would die. And that's why even if Hourglass is revealed from a hidden in a certain battlefield, it still works on all battlefields and your home base, and it basically works everywhere for you, even if it was revealed at a certain battlefield. Because Hourglass actually doesn't require you to target anything. It's like this mandatory effect that will happen no matter what, and that's why it will happen no matter where the unit would die. Set Legend is technically the same. When a buffed unit you control would die, you may pay a power to save it. But the difference between Set Legend and Hourglass is that when the kind of lingering set passive trigger is fulfilled, it then lets you choose if you want to save that unit. So that's the difference between them. These lingering ability triggers are always there, like a passive. And even if it doesn't say action or reaction speed, it instantly triggers when the requirement is fulfilled. So for example, Zonia's will just trigger instantly, no matter where your units are, no matter what the unit is, and no matter what speed the unit got killed as. Did it get killed by a spell or in a combat or etc, etc. And at number 4 are abilities that don't say the word to do something. These abilities work even if you cannot fulfill the first requirement. This sounds a little complicated. So for example, Zone Battlefield and Traveling Merchant. Zone says, when you conquer discard 1, then it has a dot. So that's the first part of the ability. Then comes the second part of the conquer effect. And because these two parts had a dot in between them and not a 2, so it didn't say discard 1 to draw 1, it just said discard 1 dot draw 1. So if your hand is empty and you don't have anything to discard, you still draw a free card from Zone. This is because the draw part is not dependent on the discard part. They're like separate abilities of the conquer effect, and the same happens with Traveling Merchant. When you move, discard, then dot, then draw 1. Doesn't say discard to draw 1. And Salvage also got errated by Riot. Riot said that you can still play Salvage to draw 1 card, even if there isn't any gears on the board. So you don't actually have to target a gear to get the draw 1 from Salvage, which in my opinion makes sense because there's a dot in between the first part and the second part. And third, if a player plays any targeting card that reads on a battlefield, moving the card that was targeted out of the battlefield also nullifies the on a battlefield part of the card that was played. So for example, if your enemy played a Void Seeker on your unit that would normally deal 4 damage to a unit at a battlefield, but then you react with a flash to recall that said unit to base, Void Seeker doesn't deal the 4 damage to your unit anymore because the unit is not on a battlefield. But just like in the previous tip, there is a dot between the deal 4 and the draw a card. So even if the Void Seeker doesn't get to deal the 4 damage, the Void Seeker still draws a card. So recalling a unit can nullify some effects of a card that says on a battlefield. And then number 2 is probably the most important tip from all of these, and you can actually kill a unit with a might debuff. So even though debuffs say to a minimum of 1 might, you can still deal the kind of killing blow with them. So if you deal damage with a spell to a unit, for example Hextech Raying a Noxian Hopeful, that is a 4 might unit, Hextech Ray puts 3 damage on that Noxian Hopeful, and the 3 damage is gonna stay on the unit as long as it doesn't get healed, for example at the end of a combat. So now the Noxian Hopeful has 3 damage on it, and using Stupefy to give that Noxian Hopeful -1 might kills it. Damage is different from debuffing the might of a unit. The 3 damage itself stays on the unit, but the unit itself is still a 4 might unit. But now that you reduce the might of that unit by 1, it goes to a 3 might unit that has 3 damage on it, and reducing the might ends up technically killing the unit. I'm explaining this and it does sound a little complicated, but for example, this also works with Smokescreen. You can use Hextech Ray on a Master Yi. Now the Master Yi has 3 damage on it. Then you Smokescreen the Master Yi. It goes to a 2 might unit that has 3 damage on it, and then it dies. So units that have damage on them can die. So the damage stays on the unit, and when you reduce that unit's might to a point where the damage would kill that unit, it will die, because damage is a different thing than might. Hopefully I explained that well. And lastly, this is probably the most annoying thing to play against, especially as Darius. So if you play a card, but it gets defied before the card resolves, the card that you played doesn't actually count as being played. So a card counts as being played when it actually resolves, not when you play it out of your hand. So you play a card out of your hand, it's not actually being played yet. It would count as being played when it resolves, but then it gets defied. So the card never resolves and it didn't count as being played at all, which is a little weird. But for example, if your spell gets defied before it resolves, then the spell that got defied won't count for the Legion effect, for example, because the card never got to resolve. And I think it's a little weird, but I've gotten used to it by now. And this also works with hidden cards. And let's take Hidden Blade for example. Hiding a card doesn't count as playing the card. So I hide Hidden Blade on a battlefield, the Hidden Blade doesn't count as being played yet, and on my next turn I finally reveal the Hidden Blade. It still doesn't count as being played, but then the Hidden Blade resolves, killing a unit, and now finally the Hidden Blade counts as being played. And now, for example, the card that I just revealed would count for Legion, and you could basically hide something on your turn. So finally, when it's your next turn, you can reveal that card, it resolves, and you proc Legion for free basically. And long story short, cards count as being played when they actually resolve, not when you play them from your hand. I hope you understood something that I tried to explain in this video, and I hope you learned something new. And please do give me feedback on these guide videos, because I do feel like I'm sometimes bad at explaining, and I hope that these videos actually help people rather than confuse them even more. But if you want to see more of these types of videos, subscribe, let me know what you would want to get covered next, and see you next time.